impromptu YouTube live because we have been talking about upholstery all week, and I hope you guys can hear me. Kwabna, I've got my 15-year-old here who is the cameraman. So he's going to tell me the comments. I'm going to go through some things about upholstery that you may not know, and we're just going to jump right into it. After, we're going to let people to join us because we literally just went live. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Does my lighting look good? Kwabna? I want people to be able to see. We are here in my quote-unquote office, which is the basement. So the lighting here is not very good. So today in this live video, we are talking about upholstery. We have been talking about upholstery all week, literally. And what we're going to be talking about are the 10, well, there's more than 10, but there's 10 tips that most beginners don't know when it comes to upholstery. And so I've been doing upholstery now for the last several years, and I was able to, by pre-pandemic, take several classes in upholstery. So I wanted to teach you what I've learned. So we're going to talk about that today. Hope you guys are excited. So how many people do we have on?
16.
16 people. So where is everybody from tonight? Where are you guys watching from? Most of you people that are watching probably are from either my YouTube or from the email. If you're not signed up for my email, you can go to Thrift Diving. But let's jump right into it. So people are going to come and we will, try to reiterate the tips. Okay, so the first tip that I have for you is, and this is a tip that I think most people know already, but when you're reupholstering, you always want to save the old pattern. I cannot reiterate this enough. And the reason why, and I've got some projects up here and I'll talk to you about these, but the reason why is because when you take off the old pattern, many times there are curves, and Kwabna, you can show some of these projects here as I'm talking, but a lot of times, and you'll have to excuse me, I've got a lot of mess here in my basement, but a lot of times there are patterns. This is pretty simple, it's just just a regular square, but a lot of times you're gonna have a piece of fabric that's got turns and it's got twists, and you're not gonna know where to put things. So what you always wanna do is make sure that you are not going willy-nilly with this, because let me tell you, this chair over here, can you get a shot of so this chair over here, guys, if you remember, I had done this chair, I guess several years ago. I started it, and then we'll get some more shots of that. So this wingback chair I actually did in an upholstery class, and when I took the big chair, I was lugging it into the class. The teacher said, Serena, I don't think that you should strip this thing down to the bare wood. I think you need to just cover it with fabric. And I said, no, Michael, his name is Michael. I said, we've got to take all this apart. It's from the thrift store, it's $60, it smells. So we need to get this thing stripped. Well, let me tell you, this was a tough job because I literally had a hard time getting all of the fabric off. And so what I did was I just started ripping the fabric. So when you're doing a project like this, or you're doing something like this dining room chair here that I did, there's a lot of things about this chair that if you're a beginner, you're not going to understand how to put it back together. So I would always tell you to very gently remove all the staples, save that pattern, and then lay that pattern out. And I think the hard part with this, when you go to the thrift store, a lot of times these chairs are nasty, they're disgusting, you don't even want to touch the fabric because it's gross, but just put on some gloves if you have to. And I know that you don't want that fabric to touch your new fabric, but you have to do it. So what I would tell you for tip 1 is to make sure that you are very carefully, very gently removing those staples. And if you get a good staple remover, a lot of times you can get those staples out without damaging your fabric. So that's tip number 1. And I think most people know that, but I'm going to share some tips with you in this live that I'm pretty sure you didn't know. But before we go into the other tips, I want to tell you guys, all this week I've been telling you about the online DIY upholstery course. Many of you, well, I say many, but 20 people have signed up. Thank you. And it's over at Chair Whimsy, but I have a link for you. I have a special link where you can sign up. So if you've been wanting to learn upholstery, you want to learn to do some of these projects, but you don't know how to get started, you got to sign up. I think the registration opened last week, and it's actually closing tonight at midnight Central Time. So go to thriftdiving.com/class, thriftdiving.com/class to sign up for the upholstery class. And she actually has a YouTube group. She has a full course module, 8 modules of everything you want to know. So we'll get back to that.
We got a lot of people coming in from everywhere. It's Colorado, New Jersey, Washington.
Nice. What's up, everybody? I'm so sorry that I can't look at the comments. That's the one thing I love about live, where I can look at the comments. But right now, it's like I'm just talking to myself. So I'm sorry. But yeah. Do we have anybody from Maryland here?
Oh, yeah, look, just now. Vicky Vape from Maryland.
What, Montgomery County?
Brazil.
Brazil. Nice. Okay, so just to reiterate, when you are reupholstering a chair, do not rush through the first part of taking all the old fabric off. Save it as best as you can because you will need that for the next piece that you cut out. So that's tip number one. The second tip, and this is where I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see well, but for those of you who are doing upholstery, right, or who've done sewing, let me show you what happens when you go to get fabric. All right, don't come in too close yet. All right, so this is what happens when you go to get fabric, and this is kind of beat up because I've been using this for other projects. I've got this gorgeous fabric here, and some of the words that you may not know, this is your selvage line, right? So when you get some fabric, typically for like home decor, I believe it's about 56 inches. It might be a little bit wider. But what happens is when they cut the fabric, they don't necessarily cut it at an even angle. So what happens is when you're trying to reupholster something, like for example, if I'm trying to reupholster this chair, this is something I did several years ago and I love it. But let's say I'm reupholstering this chair. What happens is that I'm trying to figure out how do I make an even cut, right? Because a lot of times you think you're doing a perfect square. So let's say with this piece, I think this chair, I actually measured it. It's 17.5 inches for this seat part. But what happens is when you try to cut a perfect square, it never works because it's just a very difficult thing to do. So I actually want to show you a little technique that I learned in upholstery class about how to get a perfect line every time. And I'm going to actually have you come in a little closer here, Pavana. All right, so just think of pantyhose, right? I don't think women actually wear pantyhose anymore. But if you think of pantyhose, remember how you would get a run in your pantyhose? And what would happen is the run would just continue to go straight up your pantyhose. Well, I'm going to show you, this is a very woven fabric here. So I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned in upholstery. If you cut into the selvage, right, just go in a little bit. Usually the selvage is about 1/2 inch. You're going to snip in there, and then you're going to pull the fabric apart a little bit. You see those loose fabric, those loose fibers? There we go. Those loose fibers are going to allow you to grasp it. Now you have to be careful here. Some fabrics will not let you do this because it will tear off. But if you hold this and just start to pull and cinch this fabric up, you can work your way along the grain of this fabric. So look what happens. I don't know if you can see this, but do you see the run in this fabric? There's a line that goes right here. This is your cut line. So if you don't have, let's say you just don't have a way to cut your fabric straight. It's very difficult. You're trying to use a yardstick. If you grasp this and pull it all the way across, you're going to get a nice line here, a nice run in your fabric. So if you can see this line, now what I can do is I can actually take my scissors and snip this. And I know that that fabric is going to be at a 90-degree angle. So I can just cut this. I didn't even need to measure this. I didn't need a yardstick. And I can be pretty certain that at least this part is going to be at a 90-degree angle. So that's a tip that if you can use this on your home decor fabrics, try it. Now I can tell you there's a fabric that I tried this on, this little floral fabric over here. I tried it and it didn't work. And the reason why is because the fibers started to tear on me. Because I was like, okay, I'm going to do this live. Let me make sure this actually works. And so I tried it on this gorgeous cotton fabric, but it didn't work. So you have to, pick and choose your fabrics, give it a try for every single fabric that you're working with, because it does help you to get a nice straight line. And it just saves you a little bit of hassle, because when you think that you're cutting at a nice 90-degree angle, guess what? You're probably not. So anything that you can do to get better cuts will help your project turn out even better. Because imagine if you're cutting this and you think you're using this yardstick and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to lay this on the table and get a nice 90-degree. Well, when you go to put the fabric on the chair and one side is a little too short and one side's a little too long, now you've kind of run into some problems. So you want to make sure that your piece of fabric that you're cutting is even all the way around. So that's a little tip. Most beginners don't know that. I didn't know that until I took the upholstery class. So it's a little tip for you. Also too, I will leave a link down below when this video is over so that you can see how I used it. I actually used it in this fabric to make a DIY shower curtain. And I demonstrated in that video. You might not be able to see it too well on the live, but it's in that video and I will leave a link down below. So that's tip number 2. And for those of you who are just coming in, tip number 1, definitely use your old patterns to create a new pattern. So be careful when you're removing the old fabric. Don't just rip it off because you just want to get started. You need that fabric. And then cut your fabric at a nice even, to get a nice even angle. I don't know what that was. And you can pull those fibers. Okay, the third tip is to find the center of everything. So let me tell you how I used to upholster chairs, right? So let's take this chair, for example. How I would usually do this is, now normally when you're reupholstering a chair, this is actually going to be off, right? So if you go into the bottom of this chair, and I'm not going to remove it for you today, you'll see that there's some screws underneath of here, right? So when you get started, you just want to remove this seat. Generally, it's a piece of wood. Well, I say generally. On a chair like this, it's a piece of wood. Some chairs are more elaborate. You've got webbing, you've got springs, but this is a pretty simple chair, and I think most dining room chairs are going to be like this. You remove this, you put the wood flat, and a lot of times what people will do is they will start upholstering at a corner. This is how I used to do it. So I would take my stapler, I would start at one corner, and I would just pull the fabric over to the other corner, right? Like most people started that way. But if you look at this chair, I'm gonna get a good shot of this chair. If you look at this chair actually has a motif right here in the center. This is where I wanted this to be. So imagine if I had started over in this corner and I'm yanking this fabric all the way over to the side. What do you think is gonna happen to this motif? It's gonna shift, right? So here I'm thinking I'm doing a wonderful job reupholstering, but guess what? That little center pattern is gonna shift and it's not gonna look good. So here's what you have to do whenever you're reupholstering, and this is a tip that I learned. You always wanna find the center of everything, okay? So if we're reupholstering this, we wanna find the center of this chair. Now, just for time's sake, and so I didn't show you how bad my math skills can be, I already did the numbers for you. So this chair seat is actually 17.5 inches. So the center of that would be half of 17, which is 8 3/4, right? So now remember, this seat is actually, when I'm reupholstering it, it's gonna be upside down. So I'm gonna find the center of this chair at 8.75, right? So what I would do is I would actually mark the wood. When this is off and I'm reupholstering, I would mark the wood right there in the center. And let me tell you what I would do next. So let's say I'm using this fabric. Okay, come up here, Pavna. So let's say I'm using this fabric, and this is a little tip for placing your fabric. Let's say I want this beautiful, let's do it this way. Let's say I want this beautiful floral print right here in the center of my chair. Now I know that this has to be more than 17.5, right? So typically I'll add maybe like 2 or 3 inches all the way around. But here's the thing, the center of my fabric would be right here where this motif is, okay? So what I would do, and I'm gonna see if I can show this to you. This is my center. I'm just gonna fold the fabric, okay? Just pretend that this is actually cut to a nice square. And in fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this fabric here. Don't mind me, I'm just showing this to you. Okay. All right, so let's say this is my fabric. I know this is the center. Here's what upholsterers will do. They will actually, and you don't want to cut into your fabric, but just right here on the seam of your chair, of your fabric, you're just gonna give it a little snip right off the corner, okay? So when you open this fabric, this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get this beautiful, I say beautiful. Hold on, let me cut this a little bit so you can actually see this. I should have cut a nice little square for you. So you have to use your imagination here, guys. All right, so when I open my fabric, and remember, we're acting as if we have a square. Do you see I've got a V here? This V is my notch that tells me this right here is the center of my fabric. So what I want to do is I want to match this V up with that center point, which was what we decided it was 8 3/4. So we're going to match up the 8 3/4 with this part, which is the center of the fabric. That means that when we put one single staple here, we know where the center of that chair is and we know where the center of the fabric is. That fabric is not moving. And this is very important. So if you are working with motifs, if you are working with stripes, if you're working with buffalo check, whatever your fabric is, you don't want it to shift, because if it shifts, it's going to look bad. Now, you can kind of get away with this if you're working with plain fabrics, but still, you don't want that to happen, because what may happen is you may have all this fabric over on the side and it still looks like you just didn't do a good job. So remember, always find the center of your chair, wherever you're upholstering, mark it. So let's say I put a little mark there on the underside, and then find the center of your fabric, and then put one single staple right there. And that's how you start. Whenever you're upholstering, you always start in the center, find the center, start in the center with that single staple. All right, so let's move on to the next tip, because it's related to the tip that I just gave you. And this is tip number,
What is this, 4 now?
yes, this is 4, tip number 4. So now that we put that single staple right there in the center, what you're gonna do is you're gonna work out. And remember, I told you, you have to work out, because if you don't work from the center out, your fabric is gonna shift. And let me give you a good example of how I realized how important this is. So this chair, this is something I got at the thrift store. I reupholstered it. I mean, it looked pretty bad when I got it. And one thing you'll notice here is that it's tufted. So if I had actually started from the corner, so let's say I started over here and I'm wrapping the fabric and I'm stapling it into place, and then I decide to pull everything over from that corner, what do you think is going to happen to these buttons? They're going to shift, right? That's not what I want to happen. So what I did when I started working on this chair was I stapled down here at the bottom, and then what I did was made sure these were all in place, and I pulled up to the back of the chair in the center, and I stapled. So then what I did was, with that staple in place, I started pulling to the side. And I made sure that I pulled as tight as I could, making sure that I didn't have any wrinkles in the fabric. And it was tough. It was very tough. I got to like halfway through the project and I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish this. Like maybe I'm taking on more than I should have. But what was amazing is as I pulled, it started coming together, like the wrinkles just disappeared. And I was able to pull it tight and then staple it into place. And so once I did this corner, then I was able to move to this side and pull. And again, because this center staple was here and we found the center, nothing shifted, but all those wrinkles started coming out. So that is the tip that I would tell you. Tip number 3, find the center of everything, your chair and your fabric. And then number 4, put that single staple and pull to the corners. So you will start every single chair that way, from what I learned in my upholstery class. And remember, for those of you who joined, this is the last night for you to sign up for the online DIY upholstery course. I've been telling you guys about this all week, and tonight it closes at actually midnight. So I think you only have Central Time. I think you only have like a few more hours. So you can go to thriftdiving.com/class to sign up for the upholstery class. And after tonight, it doesn't open for at least another few months, maybe next year. So I think you want to get on this right now. All right, so the next thing I would tell you is to definitely use a pneumatic stapler. Now this is a stapler, you've seen me use it before. This is one by Arrow Fastener. I think most people who do basic upholstery will have this. This is the T50 heavy duty stapler. And the thing is, you can reupholster simple chairs with this. Like, let's say I'm doing a dining room chair, there's just a piece of wood on the bottom, there's no webbing or anything. I can use this, I can get away with it, and it'll work. But what I like to tell people is to always use a pneumatic stapler if you can, because a lot of times with chairs, well, not just chairs, but with anything that you're reupholstering, you've got stuffing in there, and let me tell you, that stuff gets thick. This chair, I added so much stuffing to this chair, I was wondering if I put too much in, because it was just kind of bulky until I started pulling tight. So if you're using just like a stapler like this, it's not going to work too well the more complex your projects are. So I will show you 2 staplers that I've used, and I'll tell you why I like one more than the other. So this is the one by Aero Fastener. Kwabna, I don't know if you can get in close here, but if you notice, this one has a little, I guess it's like a little safety trigger. And in order for this to work, I'm not going to staple because it's not turned on, but you actually have to depress this before you staple. And the problem is that if I want to get really close to an edge, oh, my fingernail polish looks so bad. I just realized. Sorry about that, guys. But if you want to get really close to the edge, let me try it here. Let's see. If I want to, let's say this is a chair and I'm reupholstering. If I want to get real close to the edge, if you notice, I can't get super close to that edge because now this is not engaged. But with this other stapler, if you notice, let's see if I can put them side by side. This one, you can actually get very close to the edge. And this is important because when you are doing, let's say, cording or piping, you know, a lot of times you got to get very, very close to the edge on that because when you flip it inside out, and I'll talk more about that in like upcoming videos, but when you get close to the edge, when you flip it over, you can't see, that cording looks nice and professional. And the only way you can do that is if you get close. So if you get close here.
Well, you have to, when you sign up, you have to go to in the description.
Yes, you know what? The description, I'll tell you the link. For some reason, I wasn't able to figure out how to get the link in the description like before I went live. But you can go to thriftdiving.com/class. So it's pretty simple, thriftdiving.com/class and sign up. So if you notice here, with this, now this is the one that I bought several years ago. I don't think they even make this anymore. The brand is still there, but this particular model, it's discontinued. But if you notice, I can get right up on that edge. So if I'm upholstering something, I literally can get right up here, pull the trigger, boom, fire right into this edge. But with this one, and I'm sorry, Aero Fastener, I hope they're not watching this. But with this one, again, if you notice, I have to have this depressed before I can even, you know, fire staple. So, but look at that. I mean, that's like 1/8 of an inch off the edge. I can't get closer to the edge. So these staplers, I want to say, this one actually, I'll show you. This one actually came with this compressor, air compressor, and I think it wasn't very expensive, but they don't make this one anymore. But what I would recommend, this is the one that I use now. This is a quiet compressor. This is by California Air Tools. I'll leave a link down below for anybody who's watching this after the fact. This compressor is so much quieter. I was in the upholstery class, and what happens is as you are using your tool, you're leaking air, right? Like you're using the air, so it has to fill back up. And so it would startle me. It would be so loud. And in the upholstery class, it's kind of quiet. Everyone's talking. And next thing I know, it's like, and I'm like, whoa. So anyway, one of the women that was there, she had the California Air Tools, and I was like, I'm getting that. I think this is only about $100 on Amazon. I'll leave a link, and you can get an upholstery gun for like $30, $40, $50. It's not very expensive. But also too, when you're buying a compressor and, you know, a pneumatic stapler, you have to get the coupling. So this is the little coupling that comes with it. Well, I say it comes with it, but I had to buy this separate. And then this is the compressor hose. And literally all you do, it just fits onto the male part. And there you go. So I'll plug this in. Actually, you know what? I was going to do a comparison, but I don't know if you can tell on the videos. I won't do the comparison. But anyway, you have to have this. Definitely use this. It just makes it so much easier. So that is tip number 5. All right, let's move a little faster. All right, okay, tip number 6. You have to pay attention to what gets removed first, second, and third. This is so important. And this came up when I was reupholstering this wingback chair. I'm going to show everybody the wingback chair. This is the wingback chair that I worked on in class. Beautiful fabric. I don't know if you can see. Can you get the side? Let me see if I can get back here. And this is an example. I have so much stuff back here. Okay, so here we go. So this is an example of, this had to be put on after this, right? So you can see, like, if let's say if I was taking this chair apart, I would take this piece off first because I can clearly see that it's overlapping on this piece. So when you're taking your chair apart, take a lot of pictures and videos. Take a lot of pictures and videos because you're not going to remember what you took off first, what you took off second, but I'm telling you that you should pay attention. Take note, make the videos, make the clips. That's what I did when I was reupholstering this chair, because otherwise I would not have known what to do first, second, and third. So how my teacher explained it to me is when you're taking the chair apart, look to see what is overlapping. So for example, if I were to turn this chair over, on the bottom you're going to see the dust cover, right? So that's generally one of the first things that you remove, and then you start peeling away the layers. However, when you go to put the chair back together, that dust cover is going to be the last thing that you put on. So that makes a difference. If your chair is complicated, you're going to want to pay attention to what you take off first, second, and third. Lots of pictures, lots of videos, take notes, and just know that there is an order to the madness. So that's tip number 6. Tip number 7. Bobna's yawning over there. Are you sleepy? I'm pulling him away from his video games. Okay, tip number 7. Use the pinch test. This is very important. So when you're reupholstering, a lot of times we think we're pulling the fabric tight enough, but we're really not. And there's a way to tell whether or not your fabric is pulled tight enough, and that's when you do the pinch test. So as I was pulling all these projects together, I was looking at some projects that I had done before my upholstery class, and this gorgeous little stool, I did the pinch test. Now, it's got some wrinkles. What you should do is just pinch your fabric. Just pinch it. Do you see that? Get close, Pamela. I can actually pinch. I can pinch here. So what that tells me is that, guess what? I didn't actually do this properly. I didn't pull the fabric tight enough. You know, you can do it on your chair. Now on the chair, I'm doing this little pinch test. Oh, this fabric is so beautiful. And it seems like it's okay on the chair, but back here, I got a lot of slack. So that is not good enough. Now, it was good enough for me at the time because I'm like, I got it done. It looks better. Moving on. But when you're doing a job and you want it to look professional and you're trying to improve your upholstery skills, do that little pinch test. And what I would recommend is before you put everything in place, before you staple everything, make sure you're pinching as you go. Because if you notice that you're getting a little bit too, you're pinching that fabric, then you got to take some staples out, pull that baby tight. Now over here, look at this. I'm not getting anything here. You see that? That tells me that this chair was done at least, Wabna's trying to pinch too. So that chair, surprisingly, I did it pretty good. Now, I'm not a professional upholsterer. I just know what I learned in my upholstery class. So again, if you guys want to take an upholstery class, you can go to thriftdiving.com/class. If you remember from my video for, I guess about 3 weeks ago, I was interviewing Wendy and she was saying, hey, I've got upholstery classes. Well, she allowed me to sign up as an affiliate. So if I send people over there and they purchase, then, I make a commission. But we all loved Wendy, right? That interview was amazing, and she just was like a dream to meet because she knows a lot of information, and she actually allowed me to have access to the course. So I can tell you that it's a great course. She's got a private Facebook group, and those women over there are chatty. I mean, there's like at least 20 to 30 posts per day. So if you're looking for a community of people where you can like bounce ideas off of and learn how to reupholster a chair from start to finish properly, including webbing, then that's where you go. thriftdiving.com/class, and you can sign up. All right, number 8. Okay. Even though upholstery is very, very expensive, if you pay someone to do upholstery, it costs so much money. And you're like, why am I even paying you to do this? I can just buy a whole new sofa or chair. One thing you can pay them to do is to upholster your buttons. Now, this chair is a great example of the upholstered buttons. What I did was I literally just took the buttons to them and they upholstered them. They upholstered the buttons. And I happen to say that it was maybe like $2 a button, which can be expensive. I mean, you figure I have 9 buttons. So and I had 2 chairs. So that can still be expensive. But if you've ever, don't do that. If you ever go to like the craft store and you get those little button covers, I mean, those, believe me, they don't work very well. Those little button kits. And especially if you're dealing with like a thick fabric like this or like a thick fabric like this, those buttons are not going to look as good as the upholstered buttons. They actually have the machines to do them well. So I would say that, can you stop flipping that thing? Kwabna's like, he's flipping a little switch. I'm like, every time you do that, there's this like click in the background. You know, we're mindful of all these noises. Okay, so definitely get your buttons upholstered. You know, just Google upholstery services in your area and you'll see some companies. Tip number 9, do not be afraid to use tack strips. Let me tell you why. Tacks are so hard to apply. I have done them on this chair. Let me see if I can turn this around. Typically, my kids end up pulling the tacks off. And, you know, they're not perfect. I've got some areas that are not even. But if you notice here, they're pretty well spaced. But it takes time to do that. And if you don't have a lot of patience, if you're finding that your tacks are, you know, one's up here, one's down here, they're farther, use tack strip. I've never used it, but people swear by it. It's literally just a long stream of tacks that are just, you know, binded together. And it's much easier. So you just, you know, tack them in place with your little tack hammer. But if you're adventurous, you can do tacks yourself. There was a blog post that I came across and it had a little cardboard. It just said, hey, use this little cardboard trick. So here's what you do. You take a piece of cardboard, a little small piece, and tacks probably should be spaced about every ½ inch, the center for every ½ inch. So all you do is just measure ½ inch, ½ inch, ½ inch, and draw the, you know, draw the little line and then snip. That's all you got to do. So when you're lining these up, and you can see it in the blog post. So if you go on my YouTube channel and you type in velvet chairs, you'll see where I'm using the little, you know, the little template there, the little jig, and it does work. It works. But if you have to, use tack strips. All right, and the last tip is to snip and fit your fabric around hard edges. And this is something that I think professionals just know what to do. They do it so well. When I was taking my upholstery class, you know, the man was telling me, hey, Michael was saying, pull your fabric through here on the seat and then cut it in a V and pull it and just staple it on the bottom. It was so hard to do. And I think it's something that takes practice. But here's what I would tell you is when you're you know, always pull your fabric. So let's say, okay, let's use this as an example. Okay, so down here, you notice that I've got legs, right? So how do you fit this fabric around the legs? So here's what I did. When I started from this corner and I pulled it tight, well, actually, yeah, I pulled it tight over here, but what I wanted to do is pull out that slack. So I didn't want anything. See, I'm pinching here. There's no slack. So I would pull this fabric tight and then take my scissors and just do a little snip. And that little piece that hangs here, you want to staple that in place. So now I've got this little flap. Okay, so if I'm still pulling and I snip here, now I've got this little tail hanging down. And then all I did was just flip it up, tack it in place, and that's it. So whenever you're going around edges, like hard edges, you want to pull that fabric, make sure there's no slack, and then make your snip and tuck. So it's snip and tuck, pull, snip, and tuck. And as much as I can tell you what to do, until you actually do it, sometimes it can seem like it's kind of hard. But remember, pull that fabric, snip it, tuck, and just staple it into place. So those are the 10 tips that I have for you. I'm so glad that you guys joined me because this is totally impromptu. I went out with Pabana earlier to the dentist and I said, we should do a YouTube live tonight. I don't go live that often because I never have anyone to film me. But I really wanted to share these tips with you guys and to just give you these tips because whenever you're working on your projects, these are things that most beginners don't know. And because I took the upholstery class several years ago, I know these tips and I actually use them when doing these chairs. So right now I know that we're not in person. Unfortunately, I'm so over this COVID stuff, but thankfully we still have online. So if you want to take that upholstery class with Wendy, you can go to thriftdiving.com/class and sign up. And like I said, her enrollment actually ends tonight at midnight. So you want to join before then. Now I think she's going live on Sunday. So in that private Facebook group, she is going live. And I think she's going to be talking about I think it's placing fabric. Like how do you place floral fabrics and get the best results? So there's a lot of activity over there and I want you to be a part of it. I really wish I had an upholstery class.
Someone said they want you to do more vlogs or like online streams.
Oh, you know what? I will do that. I will do that. I'm gonna get the equipment to set up to do it because right now I'm just using my 15-year-old. But I want to like have it set up so that you can hear me with a good, with a good mic and all of that. I promise you, I will put more time into live streams and be able to answer your questions. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I've talked about? All of these tips. All of these tips. What?
What?
What? Hey, also too, for anybody that wants to get these tips in a blog post, you can go to my blog, thriftiving.com. It is the new blog post that I posted. So as soon as you go there, the first post that you're going to see is this post where I'm talking about all these things. So you can pin it on Pinterest, you can save it, come back to it, whatever is going to help you. And again, remember, if you want to take the upholstery class, you have just like 4 hours to sign up.
Someone said, what's the average time for upholstering a chair?
Ooh, okay. Well, I can tell you this. This chair, this wingback chair, this actually took me several years. I laugh when I say that because I started and I stopped. But my upholstery teacher told me that the professionals can tear this chair down and reupholster it in 5 hours, which is insane. But I think if you were doing something that's simple, like this chair, I think you could probably get this done in a few hours or less. Especially if you're a beginner and you've never done it before, I would say a few hours, not even that. This chair, I didn't have to do anything to the wood. I wasn't going to paint it because I love the color of it. So I think it really depends on how much work needs to be done to the entire chair, not just what you're reupholstering, but if you're painting the chair or if you're stripping it, it could take you a weekend. Yeah, it could actually take you a week, it could take you 2 weeks. It just depends on what you come across. But if you were just upholstering this seat, I would say probably 2 to 3 hours. If it takes you longer, let me tell you, most projects are going to take you longer than what you think. I still think that I'm like Speedy Gonzalez when I do projects, and then I'm like 3 to 4 times as much time, and I'm like, why can't I get this done fast? So, as long as you make it your single project, like I wouldn't start this chair and then run into a problem and then say, oh, I'm just going to go do something else, because then you end up with a lot of projects that sit around and you just don't finish them. That's what happened with that wingback chair.
Someone asked, would a battery-powered staple gun work for reupholstering chairs?
It can work. I think it can work if you're doing something simple. But if you were doing something like, let's say, this chair, I would definitely say no. I would do the pneumatic stapler. And the only reason why is because, you're really to get these buttons to even be tufted. I mean, you're pulling tight, and I don't think you're going to get as good of results if you're using just like a simple hand staple. I really think, and I don't think that money is really an issue when it comes to, because like I said, this is about $100. And then I think for the stapler, I think you can get one for probably like $50, $80, $30.
Someone asked, how did you tuft that purple chair?
Ooh, with a lot of prayer and curse words. Okay, so here's what I did actually. All right, so I don't know if you can see this, but this chair I actually had to sew, right? So you see there's a lot of lines, there's a lot of diamonds in this chair. So what I did with this chair was, remember from tip 1, I said to save your pattern, right? That's the only way that I was able to do this chair, because I don't have the experience to say, oh, I'm just going to strip the chair and then just redo it without any pattern. So the first thing I did was made sure that I had all of the old pieces and I labeled them, right? So this piece up here was like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and I labeled them on the old pattern. Next, what I did was I sewed them together. And if you don't have any sewing skills, I would definitely recommend to get yourself a sewing machine. Maybe, let me ask you guys, are you guys interested in sewing? Because I don't think I've ever done any sort of like sewing tutorials on my site. And I think if you're reupholstering, at some point you're going to get to a point where you need to like sew something. Let's see. Okay, like this chair right here, it's got cording, right? So the only way you're going to be able to create that is with a sewing machine. Same thing.
It looks like they know how to sew in the chat.
Oh, you know how to sew? Okay, good. So if you
some
guys,
people one sewing tips too.
Okay, so I will do some stuff with sewing because I love sewing. I mean, I just absolutely love it. I don't get enough time to do it the way I would like, but I love it. If you're reupholstering, you're gonna definitely need to know. So what I did was I actually sewed all of these diamonds together. Again, using the old pattern and taking pictures and labeling it. So then once everything was sewn, what I did was did I have a long needle? Yeah, I had a long upholstery needle, and I literally just put the needle through the chair, and of course I had the button threaded on there, and the needle went through the fabric, through the chair. Of course this back is not on here, and I pulled it as tight as I could, and then this is the frame of the chair. Pulled it tight, and then pulled it over here and stapled it into place. And once I had all of these in place, so that's what I did first. I actually got all the buttons in place. Then I started pulling the fabric. So I was pulling down to the sides. This, like getting this nice and flat, this was challenging. I mean, I've got video that I can show you where I'm just literally pulling for like 30 minutes. Like, how do I get this fit around the corner? Here's another tip. Whenever you're upholstering around corners, and this is not just true of upholstering, but when you're sewing, if you're trying to fit flat fabric around a curve, you can create what's called, what do they call it? Ease. I think is it called ease? Okay, let me show you a little trick here. So if you're upholstering something that has curves, or if you're sewing something, if I try to bend this fabric, like you see this, it's just going to be wrinkled, right? But if I put a lot of snips, not big snips, but right here in the selvage, I might even have to go a little bit bigger. Okay, so now when I try to spread that fabric, you see what's happening to these pieces? So now I can bend that fabric. So when I was reupholstering this, I actually had to put some relief cuts right here in this fabric and bend it and staple it into place. So definitely, learn how to sew, bend that fabric around the curves. But that's what I did first, is I made sure that my buttons were in place, made sure everything was sewed as nicely as I could. And some of these buttons I was a little concerned about because, well, I don't know, I'd never really tufted before, but I was gonna take my time with it and make sure that it wasn't gonna pucker. I mean, tuft, anything that you tuft is gonna pucker a little bit. But for the most part, if you get those buttons in place and you secure them in place, then you can start pulling. But remember, even while those buttons were in place, I made sure that I started in the center, had that single staple, and just pulled and pulled.
Someone said to use the same pattern of the old fabric. Do you have to make sure new fabric has a similar stretch?
Great question. Generally, I would say yes, but here's what I would tell you, and I forgot to mention this. I did put it in the blog post. I always cut my fabric to be a little bigger because some fabrics are not going to have the same stretch. And so if you put your pattern down and cut it exactly the same size, you're not going to fit it exactly like that old pattern. You're just not. Your old fabric, you're just not. So in fact, when I was cutting these, I actually put, I think I even put like an extra inch along the side just in case it wasn't going to fit exactly. And sure enough, that's what I had to do. So I would always say cut your fabric a little bigger and make sure that you add maybe, let's say, even half an inch bigger, even do an inch. I mean, it's better to have more fabric than not enough fabric. That's what I said.
This guy said, tell Serena hello from the only guy watching.
He's the only guy. Who is it?
Money making Mike G.
Oh my God, that's Mike. What's up, Mike? That's Jersey Mike. Dirty Jersey. No, Mike is cool. One day I'm going to meet Mike if I ever go up to New Jersey. So does anybody have any other questions? If not, I will tell you again, it's almost 9 o'clock. So if you guys want to do the upholstery class, it's open for another 9, 10, 11, 12, like 3 hours, depending on your time zone. So definitely get yourself over to go to thriftdiving.com/class and sign up. Let me tell you. Okay, so I have decided that I am going to do a power tools course. That's right, I'm going to do a power tools course. And I wish I would have had the link to send you to, because what I'm doing is I'm just getting people to sign up for it to know whether or not there's enough people that are going to be interested. So if you are somebody who you've always wanted to learn power tools, but you're kind of nervous, you're scared, you're always having to wait on your spouse to pull their tools out, that's not good enough. We are actually going to learn how to use tools. I'm going to choose the most popular tools. So we're going to go over the jigsaw, the circular saw, the miter saw, the nailer. I think I've got a few other tools too that we're going to be doing. We're going to do like the sanders. We're going to go through everything. So I'm putting my own course together, and I'm literally going to walk you through step by step. I'm going to hold your hand.
People are excited in chat.
Yes. Okay. So if you guys, let me ask you this. So if you guys are interested in tools, gosh, see, that's one thing I forgot to do, because I'm already starting to collect, don't do that, Kwabena. I'm already starting to collect email addresses, because once I'm ready to launch, I just want to be able to say, hey, here you go, like we're ready to roll. And the way that I'm trying to do it is, I'm thinking that I'm only going to like open it up to maybe 20 people at first. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to like have one course available, but you and I, we're going to meet on Zoom. I'm going to like answer all your questions. We're going to get together like once a week for 12 weeks. So I'm trying to build out this course so that you literally can go from being scared to empowered. Like, I'm getting goosebumps. Look at this, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about it. That is how excited I am about it, because the thing is, and I tell people this, when I moved into this house 10 years ago, I didn't know how to do anything. Like, I literally had spray painted a couple pieces of furniture, and that was it. And a lot of the things that I brought into the house, they were things from the thrift store. So I had to learn how to refinish furniture, but I still didn't know how to use tools. And so there was things I wanted to do, like crown molding. We had water in the basement, so I needed to like fix that. I mean, having professionals come to your house to do all these projects, it's so freaking expensive. And I mean, just like everything, anytime you hire someone to do something for you, it's just going to be more expensive. And I'm kind of cheap when it comes to my house, but I also love doing this, and I also know that if I can learn how to do it, I don't want someone else to have to come in and do it. But when we first moved in, we didn't have any money to like pay someone to come in and do projects for us. Like, kitchen floor, what? Like, even this floor, like I put this vinyl floor down myself. Of course, it's all messy right now. But if I'd had somebody to come in from Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that to do this floor, I mean, the flooring cost $2,000. It would have probably been another $2,000 for them to come and do it. I did it myself. All I paid for was the materials. So to me, it feels so good to know that anything that happens in my house, for the most part, I'm going to be able to fix it, right? Like, I'm going to be able to improve it. I can build my own furniture. If I don't know how to build it, I'm going to take time to research it, but I know how to use the tools. I have the foundation. So that's what I wanted to do with this Power Tools course, and I wanted to get a group of people together who want to learn, who want to study with me, who want to jump on Zoom calls and like, hey, let's set up your space. Here's what you have to do. Here's how you clamp your wood. Let's make your first cut. I will be there on Zoom with you when you make your first cut. Like, that's the level of education that I want to do with this course, so that you really feel like I'm there holding your hand and helping you do it. So if you are interested in tools, gosh, I should have had my thing open. Leave a comment down below. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you're interested in tools, leave a comment down below. I will respond back to you, and I will give you a link.
Do comments save on the live?
You know what? I don't know if they do. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to tell you to send me an email. That's simple. Just to email me, serena@thriftiving.com. You don't even have to put anything. Just all you got to do is say in a subject line, hey, interested in tools, or just send an email that says tools. And what I'll do is I'll put your name in my little email list to make sure you're there. So when I'm ready to launch, you'll already know that the course is available. So that's what I'm trying to put together, because I really want to help you guys get to the point where you literally can get from your head into like fruition, anything that you want to do, any project that you want to do, because I know how I feel when I'm out in the garage and I'm working on things. It is such a fun feeling, like being able to make stuff and build stuff and know that you can pick up a tool and you don't feel scared because you already know all the things about that tool. Like, you know what to do and what not to do. So there's no reason to be scared. You know what to do. So that's what I'm going to do for the course. So definitely just shoot me an email, serena@thriftdiving.com, and I will definitely make sure that you're on the list. All right, well guys, that's it. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you. This was fun. We are going to do this more often. Yes, there's my son. Come over here, Kwabena. Come over here. This is my 15-year-old. He is now taller than I am, which is insane. Like, he literally grew up in front of my eyes during COVID, like being home on COVID. But they're about to start school. Let's see if I can turn this around.
I don't think you can turn it around.
Can I turn it around? Yes, I can. Here we go. Yay! There I am. Yeah, so he literally is like taller than me now, which is insane. All right, guys, this has been so much fun. I promise we are going to do this more often. I'm going to figure out some technology stuff. So I've got my good microphone and, tripod and all that good stuff. Yeah. All right, guys, I will see you later. And if you have any questions that come up afterwards, I don't know if you're going to be able to leave a comment on this video. You might be able to, but send me a message, email, serena@thriftdiving.com. Oh, Sonia said you look just like your mommy. Yes, he's my mini-me. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. Have a good night, and I will see you next video.